This is the College Football X. John Wilkerson here. Alabama tops the college football playoff poll, followed by Notre Dame at number 2, Clemson at 3, and Ohio State at number 4. Speaking of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban likely won't be on the sideline against Auburn. He tested positive for COVID again Wednesday. The Iron Bowl has a twist. Jon Nelson is joined by WTVM Sports Director Dave Platta to discuss all things Alabama-Auburn. John also has a Big Ten conversation with Mike Conti from 92.9 The Game in Atlanta. And 13th ranked Iowa State is in a position to do something the Cyclones haven't achieved in 108 years. Find out what that is with my discussion with the voice of the Iowa State Cyclones, John Walters, from Learfield IMG College. So let's start the show.
Welcome to the College Football X with your hosts, Jon Nelson and John Wilkerson.
Thank you, Steve Henderson, and welcome. John Wilkerson here. Plenty of feel-good stories this 2020 season in college football. Earlier we discussed Coastal Carolina, Liberty, Indiana on the College Football X. This time, the Iowa State Cyclones take center stage, and here to discuss the special season for Iowa State is the voice of the Cyclones, John Walters. John, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Now, I purposely didn't mention Louisiana on the list because obviously Iowa State opened with a loss to the Raging Cajuns at home. But my question is, was that loss a splash of cold water that's kind of led to the success so far?
Yeah, I think it's possible. It's really hard to know those things for sure, but a lot of people will say, well, gosh, if Iowa State just had lost to Louisiana, they'd probably be in the really strong mix for the college football playoff. But, would they have beaten Oklahoma if they hadn't lost to Louisiana? I don't know, and there's really no way to know that. But, I do feel like, there was no real spring practice up here. They didn't have that opportunity. A lot of schools didn't. I'm not saying that wasn't the case for a lot of schools, but then, camp had really and I think Matt Campbell, the Iowa State coach, was trying to really pace the team during camp and not try to get too crazy with the workouts, not knowing for sure when the season was going to start. So they kind of eased their way into it, and they didn't play well that day. And to Louisiana's credit, they played great and had big play touchdowns, really 3 big plays of more than 70 yards for touchdowns were the difference in that game. 2 of them came on special teams, and Iowa State's gotten a lot of that cleaned up since then, and they're playing much better football. They're a far different team today than they were on that opening day. So hats off to Louisiana for a great win. They've stayed in the top 25 all season, but Iowa State's been able to rally from there and have a great season of its own.
You mentioned the Oklahoma win. Did that serve as a confidence boost for the Cyclones?
Well, I think it always does, anytime you can beat Oklahoma. And Iowa State went down there in 2017 and won in Norman as a 33-point underdog, and that really propelled them into a good season that year. It was really the first good year they had. It was Matt Campbell's second year, and that was the first good year under Matt, and then they've been good ever since. But this year they've kind of taken it to a different level, and they're first place in the Big 12 standings by themselves, and certainly that win over Oklahoma played a huge role in that. And it was a close game. I think they caught Oklahoma at a good time, too, because, with a young quarterback, you want to try to catch them early, and Iowa State did. And, they might catch them again. If these two teams end up in the Big 12 championship game, they could play each other again. So it'll be fascinating to see if that plays out.
Well, between you and me, John, I really enjoy watching Breece Hall run the football. I mean, he leads the country right now in rushing as you head into the Friday's game against Texas. As you watch him, what makes him such a special back?
Everything. I think it's his ability to do everything well. And, that's what makes him such a complete back. Otherwise, he wouldn't be on the field as much as he is. You don't have to take him off the field because he can pick up blitzes. He blocks very well. He catches the ball well out of the backfield. He's got terrific vision. He's going to get you those 3-yard gains that you need just to make sure you stay ahead of the chains, but he's also going to bust the occasional long run. And he just does everything really well. Really good vision, really good balance, faster than he looks. I think he kind of glides, and people assume he's not running that fast, and then they realize they're not catching him. And the ability to make one cut and really go. But the biggest thing I think with him is just his patience, and people have a lot of different people have said that he reminds them a little bit of Le'Veon Bell in his ability to let his blocks develop and then burst through that hole. And once he gets through that hole, he's pretty hard to get down. He's strong and he's pretty fast. And so he's having an exceptional season. He's been better than 100 rushing yards and a touchdown in every game. And he's just a sophomore, true sophomore. So, he's having a season which has him in the Heisman mix. He's fourth right now on the Athletics Heisman straw poll that they do, and I think he deserves to be in that conversation and certainly deserves to be probably the front runner for the Doak Walker Award.
Of course, it's football, so we have to talk about the quarterback, and you got a guy in Brock Purdy that really is establishing a legendary status there in Ames for what he has done with the Cyclones. What makes him a great leader?
Well, he is a leader. There's no question, and he's just a true junior. And but from the minute he got into the starting role, Iowa State has played the best football they've played in decades, and he is terrific. He has 17 wins against Big 12 competition, more than any other Iowa State quarterback, and he's just, as you said, a leader. He commands the huddle. He's very well respected by his teammates. He's got a little bit of a gunslinger in him, so he will make an occasional mistakes, but he has the ability to put it behind him and come right back and make the next play. And we saw in a game against Baylor a couple of weeks ago, he threw 3 first-half interceptions, and I think for a lot of guys that would be crushing. For Brock, he was able to keep his faith, which he has a very strong faith, and went out and had a tremendous second half and threw 3 touchdown passes in the second half and led Iowa State to a win. So, he has the complete confidence of that sideline. He's not being asked to do as much this year as he did last year when he led the Big 12 in passing. But that's because Breece Hall has emerged at the level that he has. And so Iowa State has much more of a balance this year between the run and the pass. Something Brock has done really well here in the last few weeks is run the ball himself. And I think that really opens up the Iowa State offense. He's got the ability to do some nice running, and he really hadn't run the ball much. He didn't do it much last year because he was playing hurt most of the year. And then this year, at the start, he wasn't running it a lot. Right now, he's a real threat to run the football, and when he does that, it really opens things up for Breece Hall and the passing game.
So who's a player on the Cyclones that is under the radar, but we need to know about him?
Well, it depends where your radar, how deep your radar goes. There's a guy named Mike Rose who's playing Sam linebacker that is playing as good a football, I think, as probably any linebacker in college football. He's been tremendous. He leads the Big 12 in interceptions with 4. He's a Dick Butkus Award candidate, and I kind of laugh about that because I grew up in Chicago as a kid, a Bears fan, and back then, Dick Butkus was considered just a huge linebacker. He was 6'3", 245. There just weren't a lot of linebackers that big running around as fast as he could run. Well, Mike Rose is 6'4", 245, so almost identical measurements to Dick Butkus, and he runs around and can really close. And so he's having a terrific year. And again, another true junior, kind of an under-the-radar guy definitely when he came out of high school because, he committed to Ball State, didn't have a lot of offers, and then Iowa State actually was playing a game in Akron and went to see him and fell in love with him and offered him, and the rest is history. And he's had a great career. He started every game since he stepped foot on campus, and he's really having a great season.
We're spending some time with John Walters, the voice of the Iowa State Cyclones, and John, it's on to Austin, Texas now to face the Longhorns. So as you do your deep dive and prepare for Friday's broadcast, what are some keys for the Cyclones against the Horns?
Well, I think they have to be able to run the ball fairly effectively. Now, I'm not going to say they have to go rush for 200 yards. They've been averaging better than 200 rushing yards a game. Sure wouldn't hurt their chances if they could do that, but I think they got to at least run for, 100, 125 to keep the Texas defense honest. When Iowa State went down there 2 years ago, they had the same stakes. If they won that game, they were going to win the Big 12 or go to the Big 12 championship game. It was a November game. They went down there, and Texas really handled them. Beat them 24-10, but it was really even more lopsided than that. And they dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They're very athletic, a lot of size, and that particular day, David Montgomery, who's now with the Chicago Bears, was suspended for the first half of that game, and so Iowa State really never got the run game established at Texas that night, and as a result, Texas was able to really pin its ears back and come after Brock Purdy, and they sacked the quarterback 6 times, and Iowa State just never could get anything going offensively. Now, a year ago in Ames, Breece Hall rushed for over 100 yards. Brock Purdy threw for 354, and Iowa State beat Texas in Ames on a last-second field goal by Connor Asali. So I think that's the formula. You have to at least run it enough to keep the defense honest and keep them from really coming after the quarterback. And, then you can make some explosive plays and make them pay a little bit for their aggressiveness if you do that. But no doubt in my mind, Texas is going to be amped up and really ready for this game. They have really been a tough matchup for Iowa State through the years, with the exception of, Iowa State did get them a year ago, but physically they have just been a very tough matchup. Now, I think Iowa State has closed that gap some, and we'll see how much they've closed that gap on Friday.
Now, will you be accompanying the team to Austin, or are you staying back to call the game remotely?
No, I'm going to accompany the team. We're going to do our basketball games on the road remotely this year, but I'm still traveling with the team on football games. So
you get to spend Thanksgiving in Austin, Texas.
I do.
I hope you get some good barbecue with your turkey.
That sounds pretty good right about now. Yeah, always a great place to go. Really a great city, and hoping for Iowa State to play well. I think if they can play at the same level they've been playing at, to beat Kansas State last week 45-0, I don't think anybody saw that coming to blow them out. Iowa State's playing some really good football right now, and they're going to have to play really good football to beat this Texas team on its home field.
Exactly. So there are some perks with the job. Some good Texas barbecue with your turkey. We all acknowledge this has been a strange year, especially in college football with all the COVID and the restrictions and everything. But Iowa State's having a special season. So what has the response been like in Ames, on campus, to what Iowa State's doing? Because you're in first place in the Big 12 this late in the season, a great shot at being in the title game. I got to think the enthusiasm is pretty high.
Well, it is. There's no question it is. Unfortunately, you don't see it in the stadium because, the last home game against Kansas State Saturday, no fans were allowed other than, the parents of the players. And so, we've had 3 games this year where we've had fans. We've had 2 where we haven't. They're just trying to play that as safe as they can. But there's no question that this fan base has been starved for something like this for a long time. And you can kind of see it building because Iowa State took some real steps forward each of the last 3 years with Matt Campbell. And now this is his 5th year on the job. He, obviously taking another big step forward. But he's a terrific coach. He's 40 years old. He's just tremendous with the players. There was a great article in Yahoo Sports by Pete Thamel this week on Matt Campbell and the relationships that he has with the players and how it kind of drives the success that he has. And we're blessed to have him. We get it. We understand that. He really likes it here. He's got a great family, and, he's taken Iowa State to some places where they've never been before, and it sure is fun to be along for the ride, but it's 100% him and those players and their relationships and the great job they've done in recruiting and retaining players because they're still a developmental program. They're not going to have the number of 4- and 5-star guys out there that Texas is going to have on Friday. But that doesn't always mean that the team with more stars next to their name wins. And Iowa State's going to have to execute and play really well, but that's what they've been doing. And so I'm excited about this. But, it is a special time in Ames. The fans are really jacked about it. And, we would love to win our first conference championship since 1912. And that's how close we are right now.
Wow. So you have to go back to, I guess, when Woodrow Wilson was president?
I believe they were. Yeah, I think they went 2-0 in the Missouri Valley Conference that year to win the championship. And I'm not kidding. And so, it's been a while.
Oh my goodness! Well, it's a good time right now to be an Iowa State Cyclone fan, that's for sure. John, where can we hear your broadcast on Friday?
Yeah, we're on TuneIn Sports. Would be probably the easiest way to describe it for people to get on TuneIn Sports and listen to the app there. And I hope people enjoy it. We're having a lot of fun following this football team.
Yeah, I'll either be listening on TuneIn, doing yard work, or in some kind of turkey coma. But I will be tuning in. John Walters, the voice of the Iowa State Cyclones. Safe travels to Austin. Have a great call Friday, and I'll be listening, by the way. And thanks for being a part of the College Football X.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, John.
We join Jon Nelson next, and this is the College Football X.
The OSG app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. Install the OSG app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, and lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Download the OSG app today. What makes college football special? It's the rivalries and trophy games. From the Iron Bowl to the Book of Knowledge. You are listening to Rivalries and Trophy Games on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Welcome back to the OSG on CFB. It is the X, and one of our X Factor interviews this week comes to us from Columbus, Georgia. WTVM-TV News Channel 9. It is one of my good friends in the business, Dave Platta, to catch us up on Iron Bowl. Dave, it's good to hear your voice.
Good to hear from you too, sir.
All right, so Iron Bowl, you have actually seen Auburn play in person on the field this year. What have been some of your takeaways about, I guess, what can be described as the Forrest Gump box of chocolates offense that you get from Auburn this season?
Well, the two times I've seen them, I saw them against Kentucky, and then I saw them on Saturday against Tennessee. The offense, it worked in fits and starts. When Bo Nix gets things going, he really gets it going. The one thing that Auburn's been able to do is come up with a big play when they've needed to, at least the two times I was there.
Looking at the injury list, there's 3 big misses as of right now, when you and I are talking, and one of them is someone that you have followed since high school over there as a Callaway Cavalier. Tank Bigsby had the injury last week, and as of right now scheduled not to be a part of this Iron Bowl.
Yeah, that's a big that's a big blow for Auburn, because Tank has lived up to his nickname. Certainly, he came in as a true freshman. Excuse me, and he has been he's made waves since he got in there. I'm not surprised, because having seen him play in high school the last 2-3 seasons, I knew what he was capable of. But he's gone in there, and especially the last 2 or 3 weeks, he really went in and seized the moment when he had his opportunity and was making the absolute most of it. For him to injure his back like he did early against Tennessee, and for it to be severe enough that he likely will not be able to play against Alabama in the Iron Bowl, that's going to make life a little more difficult for Auburn.
And at the same time, I know that you saw Shaun Shivers. Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah.
You saw Shaun Shivers take some of the load when Tank couldn't play against Tennessee. But now you're looking at this defense from Alabama who sees this absence, and I know that they're probably going to want to capitalize on it as one of their points of focus.
Well, don't take Shivers lightly. He can play. He can play. I mean, he does actually have kind of a prototypical running back's body, albeit a little on the shorter side. But, I mean, he's strong, and he's tough to bring down. In addition, Auburn does have DJ Williams. Williams did make an impact late against Tennessee. But of the 3, it's obvious that Tank is the top player of the 3, but those other 2 guys are very capable of making a contribution.
When you look at wide receivers, obviously Bo Nix has found Seth Williams as far back as game 1 last season at Jerry World as one of his favorite targets. But for the wide receivers of Auburn going up against the secondary of Alabama, it's another challenge entirely from what we've seen so far this season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Auburn can bring against the Tide. The Tide defense has not been as scary as it has been in past seasons, of course. But they're still Alabama. There's still all those 5-star recruits who go out there and play like 5 stars when they get out there. Nix you can see his growth in this offense, and you can see how well he's connected with his wide receivers. But again, it comes in fits and starts. Seth Williams taking that stinger like he did on that touchdown. Okay, it was a touchdown reception. In my eyes, it was a touchdown reception. Okay, that was a great catch and shows what he is capable of. Hopefully, he'll be 100% and ready to go against Alabama.
And at the same time, though, I think that it's taken a little while for Chad Morris to figure out what to do with Anthony Schwartz and put him in places to succeed. Obviously, the big touchdown against Tennessee was a breakdown in coverage in the secondary, because you saw in man coverage, the particular safety was looking for help behind him, didn't get it. And then you have Anthony Schwartz do what a lot of folks know he's capable of as one of the top speedsters in the country in Division football. It's just, I find, it's going to be an interesting matchup on both sides. And I'll start with this one. Chad Morris in total up against that Alabama defense that you were just talking about.
Yeah, Morris, though, I mean, he is definitely he has a great grasp of what he wants to do on the offense. And I like how you mentioned Schwartz. What was funny with Schwartz was I was watching him, and the first name that came to mind is you have to be of a certain age to remember it was Bob Hayes.
Yes,
you're talking about a guy who can motor. I mean, fast. Unlike, say, Ronaldo Nehemiah, who wanted to be Bob Hayes too, but never was, and never, as a great sprinter, who never really got his handle on football. Schwartz has got great hands. And they can line him up properly. It's going to be great. But again, you're dealing with an Alabama defense that, like I said, they don't seem to be as scary as they are before, but they've always been able to come up with a big play.
Then let me go to the flip side and the matchup of Kevin Steele and their front seven going up against Alabama, which at points this season has just been basically putting up Nintendo-like numbers and yardage when it comes to their ways offensively. When you look at the challenge of Kevin Steele, who's not young to this matchup by any stretch of the imagination, but this front seven, where you don't have folks who graduated, who are impact guys like Derek Brown and such, going up against this particular Alabama offense, what do you see?
Well, I see an Alabama offense that has been unstoppable. Let's face it. I'm not sure anybody expected Mac Jones to be doing what he's doing this season, except perhaps maybe Mac Jones. Yeah. I mean, there was talk that he wasn't even going to be the starter, that Bryce Young was going to get the gig to begin the season. But Jones has gone out there and he's put up incredible numbers. I like the Nintendo line. That pretty much says it all, doesn't it? I mean, he should be the front runner for the Heisman. Everybody keeps talking about Kyle Trask right now, but that's the flavor of the month. You're talking the quarterback who's leading the number one offense in the nation, and he's not just a game manager. He's proven that he can manage the game, but he's been able to make the big plays as well. Getting pressure on him will be the key too. Not that you can ignore the runners. Let's face it, Najee Harris is pretty tough, and they have a whole stable of those guys too.
Yeah, Dave Platta, WTVM-TV in Columbus, hanging out with us here to discuss the Iron Bowl and the OSG on CFB. When you look at this matchup, there's always that wild card that's in there. There's always the thought process. You have two separate head coaches who look at it from two separate ways, where you have Gus Malzahn, who's more than happy to color outside the lines and come up with magic tricks and think of himself almost as David Copperfield at points and trying to come up with plays from the back of the playbook and put a guy like Nick Saban on his heels. When you look at this coaching matchup, it's another round of this one where it's almost you have someone who's by the numbers, you have someone who paints outside the box. It's an intriguing matchup that way.
Yeah, but when you got the guy that paints by the numbers as well as Nick Saban is, you have to go outside. You have to, because if you don't do something unusual and something thrown in the game, you're going to get steamrolled. And that's kind of like what's happened. I mean, what's Bama's record now? They've steamrolled 7 guys already.
Yeah.
Auburn better come up with something interesting, something to change the temperature quickly.
What's your gut tell you about this particular game?
Well, as an Iron Bowl, they always say throw out the records, throw out the numbers.
Now that's
all that. I don't know about that one.
Cliche. That's $1 in the jar for me.
Yeah, I know. But the thing is, I've seen kick sixes, but I've also seen Auburn get kicked pretty badly too. This game, Auburn's going to come in as a heavy underdog. Let's face it. Yeah. They're going to have to make an impact very quickly, or most of the impact will be they're going to have to look in the mirror to read the license plates on their foreheads because they're going to get
backside. Yeah,
I mean that's what it is. If Auburn doesn't do something, Auburn has got to at least stay in the game. If they cannot stay in the game early, it's going to be a long, long day.
Well, and so then let me ask you this. We've seen in years past where Auburn's equalizer has been special team scores, defensive scores. And I mean this in regulation, not like a kick six with Chris Davis, where you have a Smoke Monday or a Zacoby McClain, those kinds of things. We all look at the shiny objects. For Auburn, outside of the shiny objects that we know we're all looking at, give me a foot soldier. Give me someone off the beaten path who you think can be key to this game, who we really haven't focused on a lot in this particular segment that you and I have. Who can be that foot soldier?
We've been talking about, you mentioned Anthony Schwartz.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he counts as a shiny object or something, because he hasn't had a lot of big numbers or anything this season. But he's the kind of talent that if you give him an opening, he can really, really turn it into something. Now, Alabama's got some fast guys too, but I mean, Schwartz is a world-class sprinter. This guy's a world-class sprinter. If you can get him the ball, with some space, Auburn may have to look at that specifically.
All right, time for the blatant promo. For those that want to keep an eye on everything that you do there at WTVM-TV, the social media, the TV, the over-the-air, the linear, the app, all that stuff. Hit me with it.
All right, it's WTVM Dave Platta is my Twitter page. And, of course, you can catch us on the internet at WTVM.com, where, if you catch our newscast, you'll see some of the prettiest football video you'll ever see.
Straight up. Oh, DP, it's always good to catch up with you, my friend. It's good to hear your voice. Good to have you as a part of the OSG on CFB. Have a fantastic weekend. Have another good Iron Bowl, and may everything stick to the card as we'll be watching.
Thank you very much, sir. You have a good one as well.
When we come back, the OSG on CFB continues. The X just around the corner. Stick and stay. We'll be right back.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our Twitter page at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever's on your mind about college football. Now, back to the College Football X.
Welcome back to the OSG on CFB. It is the Midweek X, and one of our X Factor interviews this week is a good personal friend who I can commiserate with on a bunch of different levels, but we're going to talk the Big Ten 12-14. Mike Conti, the voice of Atlanta United 92.9 The Game, about Penn State. Mike, thanks for hanging out with us here on the X.
Yeah, John, my pleasure.
All right, so going into this season, what was the expectation level at Penn State about what they would have liked to have done in this pandemic football season?
Well, the expectation level at Penn State may not have matched the reality. And look, the reality now is 0-5. I don't think anyone expected that. But coming off a year where they went to the Cotton Bowl, they won the Cotton Bowl, they were competitive at Ohio State, they lost at the last second to Minnesota. They had the quarterback coming back. They had both running backs coming back. They did have the Micah Parsons opt-out, which I think tempered expectations a little bit. But I think realistically they were thinking they were going to contend in the Big Ten East. They might end up second to Ohio State in the Big Ten East, but it might be one of those deals where you have a 9-1 or 8-2 season and you're right back in the New Year's Six where you were last year, where you were in 2017, where you were in 2016. That was before the Journey Brown injury. That was before the Noah Cain injury. And I think it was before a lot of people realized just how disruptive the pandemic was in the build-up to this season.
So you look at them right now at 0-5, and this is probably one of the head-scratcher of all head-scratchers when you're talking about someone who's an 0-4. You look at the team to the north, or actually for you it would be the team to the northwest, and what's going on there in Ann Arbor. I mean, it's just the Big Ten just has a lot of questions swirling around right now, and two of them are in Ann Arbor and Happy Valley.
Yeah. You and I, we cover soccer a lot, and I think one thing that you've heard folks in Major League Soccer say is that COVID has been incredibly disruptive to everyone, but it's been more disruptive to some teams compared to others for reasons unknown. I think when it comes to Penn State, a lot of it might come down to the fact, and James Franklin has talked about this, that his family is away from him right now in Florida because there's a health concern with one of his daughters. He doesn't want his daughter exposed to a potential COVID risk on the campus of a university in the northeastern United States. And Franklin has said recently in press availabilities, hey, maybe I haven't handled that as well as I could have. So that could be part of it. I mean, that's only one part of the equation. I don't think there's any doubt that the start, stop, start nature of Big Ten football through August, stopping in September, but teams still kind of sort of allowed to practice. One must wonder what Penn State and Michigan might have been doing compared to, say, Indiana and Northwestern in that kind of limbo time where they had not yet really finalized plans to resume the season. Perhaps Indiana and Northwestern, for example, maximize their time better there. But I think to a large degree, John, it really does come down to the injuries of the two running backs. And we can get into the X and O's of it. But losing those two running backs, I think, has kind of eliminated the ability for Penn State to play, in air quotes, Big Ten football. And that's a big reason why they're 0-5 right now.
So when you get the temperature of folks who are Penn State fans, alums, what have you, I mean, how many of them have lost patience with James Franklin? How many of them are looking at the context of the situation? How many sit there and say, well, I think the message has been lost? Where's the temperature in the room right now with James Franklin? Yeah,
it's a really good question, and I think there's a division of opinion. For one, James Franklin has taken the program to heights that it really has not experienced since joining the Big Ten. 3 New Year's Six bowl appearances in 4 years, including a Big Ten championship. You won 2 of the 3 trips to the New Year's Six, the Fiesta Bowl in 2017 and the Cotton Bowl last year. That's a 4-year run, believe it or not, that Penn State has never had since joining the Big Ten Conference. Really, it's a 4-year run that they probably haven't had since the early to mid 1980s when they won their 2 national championships in 1982 and 1986. So Franklin's going to get the benefit of the doubt, and he's going to get some leeway because he has taken the program to those levels. But I also think there's a subset of Penn State fans who believe that, look, under this guy, you're never going to be better than Ohio State. The best you can maybe hope for is, an 11-1 or 10-2 season. Best you can ever hope for is to do what they've been doing, which is win the Cotton Bowl, win the Fiesta Bowl. You're not going to make the playoffs. You're never going to catch Ohio State. And then that creates a whole new discussion. Well, how many programs really are at that level right now where they're in the playoffs consistently? And I would argue only 3. Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State. Well, I mean, there are 130 other programs who are not them right now, but Penn State and their fans, they feel they're different. I think one sentiment that I really am starting to agree with, and it's not necessarily an indictment on Franklin's coaching ability, but Franklin is a run-pass option coach. He has recruited and assembled talent to execute a run-pass option. It's not working in the Big Ten. And you're seeing demonstrations of that against bruising teams like Ohio State, like Iowa, like Nebraska. It's not working. You're trying to play a system that may work better in the SEC East than it would in the Big Ten East. I think there might be something to that, but that's not necessarily an indictment of James Franklin's coaching ability. Everyone agrees he's a tremendous recruiter. I mean, even the biggest James Franklin detractor is going to say, well, the guy's an amazing recruiter. I think, John, where you start to see the differences in opinion are items like game management, talent management, lineup selection, things like that. That's where you seem to get a little more of a split of opinion.
So then who's ready to cut that $38 million check to get him out the door if there's that discontent that's around about game management, player management, all these kinds of things? That is an unperson, to quote George Orwell right now,
I agree with you and George Orwell. And look, Sandy Barber, the athletic director at Penn State, is not going to be doing that. There's no booster that would be writing that check right now, because I don't think we're there at Penn State. I say we, I'm an alumni.
Yeah.
They're not there. They're not at that point. I think, one other prevailing sentiment that I am feeling among Penn State fans this season, John, is apathy. Apathy. They had the hard luck loss to Indiana. Then, they played competitively against Ohio State, but at that point you're 0-2 in a season that, quite frankly, we as alumni and fans didn't even think would happen. So it's kind of like, hashtag 2020. Yeah. Whatever happens, happens. It's nothing worth getting bent out of shape over, and we'll see what happens in 2021 when you get healthier and you don't have opt-outs.
How odd of a feeling is that to sit there and, with hashtag 2020, where a fan base that is what Penn State's fan base is, and it makes for legendary television, especially at night when there's a full house. What's that vibe like where a fan base is just kind of like,
Well, it's a lot like what it was in 2012 and 2013 when they were bowl ineligible, and going into 2014 as well before those sanctions were pulled back in the midst of the 2014 season. That's the thing at Penn State. I mean, we've been through this before. I mean, the program was basically given a slow death penalty, a death penalty where they were still allowed to play, but still a death penalty where, scholarships were blown up. Kids were allowed to transfer immediately. No bowls for 4 years initially. Huge financial penalties. And I think it created a little bit of a reset of expectations among the fan base that, we're just not going to be competitive for a long time. Now, fortunately, Bill O'Brien came in and far exceeded expectations, and James Franklin came in after him and built upon that. So maybe it wasn't as bad as we thought it would be, again, speaking as a Penn State alum. But the sad thing is, John, we've been here before this decade or within the last decade.
When you look at the rest of the schedule, I mean, I sit there and I continue to ask about a vibe, and I ask about, realistic expectations. You've got that team in Ann Arbor that is running through some of the same hoops that you are, coming up this weekend at high noon. I mean, this is like critical mass almost at certain points in this conference, with two of the powers experiencing what they're experiencing.
Yeah, I think Michigan's a little more pressured, John. I think Harbaugh's seat is way warmer than Franklin's. And again, understandably so. I mean, Jim Harbaugh is being paid a king's ransom, and all he really has to show for it is a trip to the Peach Bowl, and I guess a trip to the Orange Bowl. And I don't believe he won either of those games. So, Michigan is spending a king's ransom on Harbaugh. They've gotten nothing out of it. Penn State came from a worse place than Michigan, again, talking about the sanctions. And Franklin went in there and within 3 years won the Big Ten, should have gotten a playoff invitation in 2016. Built upon that with 2 more New Year's Six bowl wins, Franklin has produced to the level of his salary. So I think Michigan feels more pressure, but I also think Michigan's going to be smelling some blood on Saturday. And again, this goes back to the apathy aspect for Penn State. And I don't want to accuse a team, especially of collegiate athletes, of quitting or giving up or anything like that, because I don't think that's a metric that you can measure. But I think there's probably going to be more, quote-unquote, want to with Michigan on Saturday than maybe with Penn State. I think at this point for Penn State, you're just hoping to beat Rutgers, and anything else you get this year is gravy. And even the Rutgers game isn't a guarantee.
Yeah, especially after what we saw last week with a triple overtimer with Rutgers. Okay, so then let me ask, is Greg Schiano Coach of the Year candidate in your mind?
Yeah, I think Tom Allen is ahead of him, but I think Schiano absolutely deserves consideration. I mean, Schiano started with just absolutely nothing. I mean, Rutgers was a mess last year. And Schiano got that job kind of late, as I recall. So I don't know how much recruiting he was really able to do. I don't know how much of an impact his recruits are having on this team. I think it's just raw X's and O's that Schiano has been able to impart this year. He's done a great job. But I think it's Tom Allen. Look, Indiana, in my opinion, they're not going to go to the playoff, but they're good enough to be in a New Year's Six game and win it. You know, they're absolutely good enough to be in the Orange Bowl and win it. They're absolutely good enough to be in the Cotton Bowl this year and win it. And I think it's a tremendous testament to Tom Allen, who, as a program builder, you know, Indiana has steadily been climbing those stairs under him over the last couple of years. That team is obviously playing very hard for him, and they're getting the results to show for it.
Okay, so let's wrap up with a completely and totally time-based question. Since you are the resident chef du jour You are the 5-star chef when it comes to everything OSG sports and soccer down here. What is Thanksgiving looking like? Is it an egg? What's going on with Thanksgiving with you?
It's funny. My wife and I were talking about this a minute ago. I said, if people had any idea how average of a cook I was, they would probably never pay attention to me on Twitter when I'm grilling. And she pointed out there's a difference between cooking and grilling. So point taken by her. John, we are doing carry out for Thanksgiving. We're letting. Actually, it's the restaurant that catered our wedding. They're doing a brine turkey breast with sausage, stuffing, and green bean casserole and desserts, all that stuff. My thing is, it's only my wife and I. No one's coming over, obviously, with everything going on this year. So we just want to relax on Thanksgiving and not do any work. So we're just going to heat up something that's been prepared for us. And maybe for Christmas, I'll do a prime rib on the egg. I like doing that for Christmas. That will involve lots of butter. But for Thanksgiving on Thursday, just going to our friends at Endive in Midtown Atlanta, and they're going to cook for us.
All right, time for the blatant promo for folks who want to see everything going on involving Mike Conti, whether it's Penn State, Atlanta United, Atlanta Hawks, 92.9 The Game. Hit me with the promo.
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at MikeConti929, and you can listen to Soccer Down here. I'm on with you guys Wednesday and Friday, John and Jason Longshore. And, of course, you can catch me on the radio in Atlanta at 92.
What he said. As always, Mike, good to catch up with you and talk, whether it's soccer, whether it's football, depending on which football we're talking about. Good to have you on here on the OSG on CFB, being one of our X Factors, talking about Penn State. Have a fantastic Thanksgiving, my friend. We'll catch up with you soon.
Okay, John. Take care. Thanks.
The OSG on CFB continues. More after this. Time to put a bow in yet another show, the OSG on CFB. Another edition of the X is in and out the door. Thanks, as always, to our guests. John Walter, the play-by-play voice of Iowa State, to hang out with us to talk about life in the Big 12. Mike Conti, managing editor, 92.9 The Game Radio in Atlanta, play-by-play voice of Atlanta United and part of the Atlanta Hawks broadcast. Anything going on at 92.9 The Game, Mike is a part of it. We got to catch up with our resident Penn State alum to talk about life in the Big 10 12-14. And also Dave Platta, sports director, WTVM-TV in Columbus, Georgia, to talk about the Iron Bowl with Alabama and Auburn. Thanks, as always, to you for hanging out with us as well. Don't forget to download the OSG Sports app, available iOS and Android, theonlinesportsguys.com, for all the news that's fit to talk about. Don't forget to subscribe and follow along at theonlinesportsguys.com for all of our written content. Follow along at OSG Sports on Facebook, at OSG Sports on Twitter, Jay Wilkerson 16 on Twitter, and me. I'm at OSG Nelson to go along with OSG J-Dub and OSG Phil, the online sports guys, for yet another run. Thanks, as always, for hanging out with us here on the OSG on CFB. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you on the weekend.
Thanks for listening to the College Football X. You can find this and past shows by downloading the OSG Sports app on your mobile device. And enjoy all of our shows from the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. The OSG Sports app is up and running. Download it today.